Why, hello. I'm Brian, and I'm the Theoretical Gamer. I want to talk about steampunk. What is steampunk? Well, the best definition I've heard of it is steampunk is what happens when goths discover the color brown. It's not so much a genre as it is a motif that is added to other things. I've seen steampunk applied to giant mecha combat. I've seen steampunk applied to fantasy or science fiction. I've seen it applied to, lots of things. It's really just adding a pseudo-Victorian style and sensibility to it. And I'm not really a huge fan of steampunk per se. I like a lot of the literature that came out of that time. I do. I like Sherlock Holmes. I like a lot of the Jules Verne, H.P. Wells stuff. But it's but like modern day steampunk, maybe that's just kind of an indie hipster not wanting to jump on the bandwagon urge, because I'm sure some of those are quite good. I think I saw a steampunk zombie apocalypse game once, so it's kind of like no. But there are some very good games that are steampunk, but are not steampunk because they were invented before steampunk was a thing. Back in 1989, Space 1889 came out. Basically, the system was crap. It was very simple, and it was one of those that you either had to kind of ignore large chunks of the system. It did have some interesting aspects, like social standing was one of your basic stats. Your social level was one of your basic stats, which was appropriate for that time period. Your social level was something that wasn't likely to change, and because you were kind of born to it, and it was and it was a big part of who you were. And it also had a section on creating mad science type inventions. And it gave you a whole list of mad science inventions which officially did not exist in the Space 1889 world. They were sitting there waiting in potentiality for your cool PCs to invent them. And if nothing else, that was a guide to create your own inventions. You could invent the things in the book or come up with your own. Pretty cool. Now, I came up with the idea that Space 1889 is actually a hard science fiction game, except it doesn't use modern science. It uses the science that was believed at the time. That space was filled with ether, that there were ancient canals on Mars from ancient civilizations, that Venus was actually a lush jungle covered with clouds. All right. And it was what if we got into outer space in the late 19th century? What if we figured out a way of getting us, that if we could somehow get us past the atmosphere, we had devices that could get us through space? And it's not entirely realistic, but it's not meant to be. It's meant to be stuffy Victorians in space, and that's what it does. There is a modern version that came out of it, Space 1889 Red Sands, which is basically for the Savage Worlds system. If you know about Savage Worlds, it is a generic system designed for fast, furious action. So I think that it might be a good fit. You've got I kind of like the way they don't actually use the word aliens, but they do have Martians and Venusians, and each planet has its own flora and fauna. But it's they're not aliens; they're Martians. It's treated the way, and the stuffy Victorians would treat Martians in the same way that they might treat Africans. They're another race. They tend to be taller than us. They tend to be very and they're part of an ancient dying culture. The Venusians are small lizard-like creatures with a rather primitive society. And it's actually a fairly in-depth world, and it's pretty well done. And there's some good fan stuff out there, you know. Another game that also came out, like I think, like in the '90s or something, by Artelsorian Games, the guys who did Cyberpunk. Castle Falkenstein. Castle Falkenstein, written by Mike Pond-Smith. It's kind of it's set on an alternate universe where magic is real, dragons exist. Dragons exist on kind of in a modern Europe setting, in the sense that they don't look like normal dragons, they look like pterodactyls, because that's kind of what they were. They were a species of pterodactyl that was intelligent and had magical capabilities and survived the perishing of the dinosaurs. And they're very few in number, and they're very reclusive. But there's also fairies. There's the Fae. And at first they seem like a cool add-on, but as you get in depth, you come to find out that they are a very integral part of the setting. They are part of the setting's history. And they're not really cute and nice. I mean, there are some characters who are fairies who are more or less friendly to humanity. But there are ones that are just ravaging, destroyer, vampiric types, and are just nasty. You got the Seelie and the Unseelie courts, which are basically the fairy. There's a supplement for Castle Falkenstein called The Memoirs of Oberon, a Fairy, which goes in depth on the fairy and how they've affected the world. And it turns out that this is not the first Earth that they have come across. They're not just dangerous. They're ravaging destroyers, and they've wiped out more than one world. They've pretty much, seen humans as their personal punching bags, went in, killed everyone, and then went back home and moped because there was nothing left to play with and they'd broken their toys. Right? So, and a few of the worlds that they found weren't exactly, they didn't destroy. Because they were dangerous even to the Fae. But because they had a lot of cold iron, which is deadly to them. But I think the Castle Falkenstein world is the fifth one, and by this time there's this big detente between the Seelie and the Unseelie courts. The Unseelie are the ones who just want to ravage, party, and the Seelie ones are the ones who believe that if you don't break your toys, you can play with them longer. So evil and not as evil. They like I said, individual ones usually of the Seelie court can be nice. They can be, but ultimately they are creatures that are very static. They don't learn or change easily. They are not creative. They're just, and a lot of what they are copies of people. They're just copies of things they've seen. They don't innovate. They don't create. And you can play one. You can play one, absolutely. And you can play wizards. The thing about Castle Falkenstein mechanically that is weird is that, well, if you're playing Victorians didn't play dice. Only gutter snipes in gambling halls and stuff rolled dice. That's beneath proper gentlemen and ladies. No, they played cards. So Falkenstein is played with 2 decks of cards. One of them is used for just actions, and one of them is used to determine casting magic spells. Now, the cool thing about it is that although you have your range from 2 to 14, if ace is high, you also have suits, and so that way, and suits are more geared towards specific type of roles, like a heart card might be more geared. You might use it on a test that involves, emotion or mental manipulation, whereas a club is more combat or fighting, stuff like that. And then magic is weird, and it's the same way. It's like different types of spells, like there's spade spells and there's club and diamond spells, which have different effects and different things. Like I think so you draw a card, and it's not like D&D where you're like, pew, 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 you just have the spell and I cast it. No, it takes time. You have to close your eyes and concentrate and manipulate and gather the energy and then cast it. So, a good sorcerer probably carries a pistol with him. He doesn't just, and you belong to magical orders which teach different spells, which teach different things, right? So, and it's pretty cool. It's like, so you draw cards. Would be like, let's say if you had a disguise spell and you wanted to put up a disguise. Okay, well, okay, it's a complex disguise, so you're going to need to gather so many points of magical energy, and and I forget exactly what type of suit you would need. Maybe a spade, or let's say it's a spade, and you're just like, okay, I got a 5 of spades. Boom. Okay, I add that to my total, and you get closer and closer. You only need 5 more points. Well, I just rolled a 10 of hearts. Huh, well, you can use the 10 of hearts, but it adds harmonics to your spell. And since hearts tend to be emotional, well, you know what? Your spell goes off, but it provokes unexpected emotional reactions in all who see it. Which, little quirks like that to make it interesting. And if you draw a Joker, basically, your spell goes off no matter how many points you have. It just goes spang and has weird, unpredictable effects. Like your love spell affects the person you're casting it on and you. Or it affects everyone in the room and causes random people to fall in love with whoever. So, casting spells can be tricky and it can be dangerous, which makes it fun. 2 different worlds. Space 1889, Castle Wolfenstein, both were invented before steampunk was even a thing. Both worth taking a look into. I think if you go to Steve Jackson Games E23, they have a lot of stuff for PDF. You can buy as PDF for Space 1889. I'm not sure if you can find Castle Wolfenstein out there. I think they might have it at like RPG Now. I'd have to go look. But take a look. Anyways, I'm out of here. Thank you very much.